Greetings, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of adventure. I know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy, it truly means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment you are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated just as you are. My friends, this truly has been a joyous adventure these past weeks with my daughter, Jayanma. It's been absolutely amazing. What can I say? So, in preparation for her arrival, I knew that I was going to want to have a considerable amount of time for paternity leave to be there to focus fully on her. And I love putting out these podcast episodes, and at the same time, it is a job. It takes a decent amount of time, energy, planning. You need quiet time, you need all of these different things. And I knew that, what I wanted to have set up was a series of episodes ahead of time ready to go. And another thing that I wanted to do was, how could I intentionally prepare myself and how could I prepare a community for Jayanma's arrival? And so what I did, starting around November 2019, so November, December, January, February, so like 4 to 5 months ahead of Jayanma's arrival, I decided what I wanted to do was to interview a group of people for 10 to 15 minutes at a time to ask them a series of questions that I would find helpful in hearing other people's perspective on, but also for Jayanma to use these interviews as a resource as she grows up, as a blueprint for her to take different pathways in life. And most importantly, so that there was a group of people who had an invested interest in Jayanma, who Jayanma could listen to these recordings. And if there's one question that she has been or wondering in life, if that's still the pronouns you're using, Jayanma, I'm using she for you right now, that she could then go to that person and say, hey, with those conversations with my dad, you talked about this. I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. And so I hope I'm explaining this right. I will admit I'm going off very little sleep. It's Ramadan, so I'm also fasting. So that being said, what I've put together is called Gifts for My Child, where I interviewed, I think about 17 to 20 people for 15 minutes each, where I asked them a series of questions that I was curious about as a soon-to-be parent, and that I thought Jayanma might find helpful. Now, for some of the questions, you might be thinking, Tom, this is a kind of a mature question. I don't think it's relevant for a baby. And in that aspect, you're correct. But as I said, I look at these recordings as something that Jayanma will be able to listen to for hopefully her whole life. Probably when she's my age, she'll be thinking, wow, I can't believe my dad used to record in digital. How old school. Everything now is a contact lens. You watch everything through your contact lens or VR. I don't know what it's going to be, but I love knowing this is going to be old school. And I hope a lot of the questions I ask, like questions about racism or sexism, I hope she's also going to be thinking, wow, what an old school concept, racism. But in the unfortunate instance that it's not, I wanted to have those intentional conversations with people who are going to be a part of Jayanma's community so that we're starting to talk about it, and at the same time, for her to be able to hear people's answers and for me to hear their answers as well. So over the course of these next 7 weeks, I've broken these up into 7 different episodes. For one, to give me another 7 weeks of paternity leave, and for 2, because it would be really long to listen to a 8-hour episode. So I've broken it up into 7 1-hour episodes. And we are going to start first with Adaora and I. We recorded our episode together literally the day before Jayanma's arrival, less than 24 hours before her arrival. And so here's the last intention I have for this. I have so many intentions for why I did this, but here's the last one. So I mentioned this actually in this episode. When I was in college, I went through a rite of passage ceremony. It was as a part of my Black Studies major. They put us through this rite of passage. And one of the rituals, or one of the things we had to go through, was we had to learn the meaning of our name, every meaning possible, both from people who named us and research its meaning. And then we had to study everything that was going on in history 9 months before and 9 months after, both in history, and ask our parents what was going on during that time period. And so I also hope, Jayama, that this for you can be an insight into that if you, at some point in your life, decide to go down some sort of pathway like that, where if you are seeking answers that you have yet to find, which I hope is always, if in that quest to find that answer, you're wondering, my dad is blank, and I want to know why, or I want to know why you all made this decision, or I'm just curious what life was like. You were born during coronavirus, for example. If you're wondering what was going on then, all those kind of things, I'm hoping that these interviews can be an insight into that. The interesting thing about some of the questions that I ask is, you have to imagine I was asking most of these questions in November, December, and January, which means Corona was starting to become kind of a thing, but was not on anybody's mind when I was asking them their questions. So for example, one question I ask people is, what's your advice for a child being born in 2020? And we didn't even know Corona was going to be this huge thing that was going to change all of our lives. Literally a week after you were born, Jayama, is when the lockdown went down. So just interesting to see when I listen back, some of the questions I ask, I'm like, oh man, it's so interesting now that I actually am a parent. So what we're going to do later on is, because I said, the rite of passage I did, you had to learn 9 months before, 9 months after is before the end of this year, before the end of the year adventure, we're going to add some updates of what it's been like these past 9 months. And of course, I keep a daily journal. You can also read Jayama if you'd like. So as you can already tell, folks, I'm speaking both to you as an audience, also speaking to my daughter. I'm also speaking to myself. This is a living, almost diary, a journal, a project that I'm sharing with her. But I also think whether you're a parent or not, whether you plan to have kids or not, whether you have any children in your life, I think you're going to get a lot of value out of the answers people give. I would say actually most of the people I interviewed do not have children themselves. And so it's just interesting, myself and the guests that I were interviewing, we all commented on how it's interesting to have a conversation where we are addressing someone who is yet to be born. There was an element of hope and excitement to it. And so I invite you to go on that journey, whether it's a child that you are hoping to have in the future or any unborn child, having the conversation with them. And I do want to acknowledge and offer my support and love to anyone that is on whatever fertility or adoption journey that you might be on. I hope that these interviews don't bring pain. Instead, they bring hope. They bring inspiration to wherever you are at. If you ever need someone to talk to, hit me up, tom@tomearl.com, @TomEarlArtist. Okay, let me get out of the way. This episode's already going to be long enough without me going on and on. I think I covered it, folks. I hope you have grace and understanding with the questions, with this process, that this was a private thing. I almost felt like as I was listening to these things, so I've been listening to them as I've been with Jayama, and we've been listening to them together. So part of me is thinking, I feel so vulnerable sharing this. What are people going to think? Oh my gosh. And I thought, who cares what people think? This isn't about them. I'm giving people the opportunity to have some insight into this journey. And so I hope it brings you blessings. But if there's any insights, anything that you thought, hey, Tom, let me point this out to you, or let me mirror this for you, or hey, I just want to add, I heard this person say this, I want to add this other perspective. I would be honored to read that or to have that conversation. Please let me know. tom@tomearl.com, @TomEarlArtist. Would love to hear any feedback you have. All right, my friends, I appreciate you so much. Without further ado, let me get out of the way so you can listen to Adaora and or is it Adaora and I's, the episode of Adaora and I. Okay, here we go. Hey, just before we jump in, Just wanted to share a quick explanation or disclaimer. The recordings or the interviews of the content of this was recorded before February. So in this instance, the one you're about to listen to was recorded in February 2020. And some of these were recorded actually in around November, December 2019. The intro that you just heard was recorded at the beginning of May, at the end of April. I share that because with so much current events going on, with so much happening, it seems on an everyday basis, if you're wondering for some reason if something seems out of context, or, hey, why aren't you mentioning this? Or, ooh, that comment you just made, given what just happened yesterday, I'm surprised. Just giving that context that I recorded these ahead of time so that I wouldn't be recording episodes while Jayama was here with us, so I could spend my full time with her. So just wanted to share that ahead of time so you know the context we were in, the time we were in, and the commentary we gave. Enjoy! Well, hello there, my love.
Hello, my love.
Why don't you share a little bit where we are, what we're doing?
So we are in Del Rey, and yesterday we got to this lovely boutique hotel inn place to both celebrate my birthday, 42, and also have a lovely kind of mini baby moon, a night away from home where we could just focus on each other and our adventure that's coming up. And just have some space and be near nature, because we're in this lovely reserve where it's a wildlife reserve for wetlands and birds, and it's only half an hour from home. It feels like we're in a completely different place altogether. Lots of fresh air, it's bright, sunny, you can see the marina not too far away. And the room was gorgeous, the service was lovely, and we felt very pampered and just in our own little space and bubble.
Great. So do you mind sharing at all what you're reflecting upon or what you're thinking?
In terms of reflecting, just being excited, but excited in a very low-key way. Thinking about this journey of how this is the beginning of something, and the beginning of something that is hard to even begin to fathom. But it's the first step of adding someone to our family, and it will be part of our little unit. This will be the most significant part of our union ever, and something that will just change and expand our lives in so many ways that we can't even begin to fathom right now. And super curious about the journey. It's probably one of those things, it's like driving, maybe, but you can't understand how you're going to do it, because it just seems like so many things to keep in mind at any given time. But then once the person is actually here, they've shown themselves, they've become who they are, they're becoming who they are. You take one day at a time, one step at a time, and you make it work the best of your ability. So yeah, it will feel overwhelming as a concept, but once the child arrives, it will feel, I think, like something that you just approach on a day-to-day natural basis. The next thing you know, you look up and it's been 20 years and you can't even remember how it was before.
Like the card from last night, 30 years.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting how, as much as I know tomorrow is the day of significance, how you really have to like pause, reflect on that. Otherwise, it just feels like another day with things to do, appointments to go to, people to pick up. I'm ready for the conversation starter. So, how do you feel to be over? I'm so bored with that question. I always tell people I'm excited. I feel like people are underwhelmed. They're like nervous. Oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I think people are hoping for that. And I'm like, and they're like, are you nervous? So I was like, no. Once my thing was just, I just want baby to be here.
Yeah.
After that, then it's, I suppose, the nervousness of every parent.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we got the house set up.
So true. For me, tomorrow is about meeting baby and making sure baby's healthy. As long as baby's healthy when we meet baby, I feel as if everything else we can take in our stride, and we'll be able to meet each joy, triumph, challenge, bit of excitement, curveball with grace. But we just pray for this health all round for all of us. I come through the delivery well, and the baby comes through the delivery bouncing.
Yes, you said that very well. I think just being present through it all while we were setting all this up. It's like, it's sick as said. Not how I envisioned. But how I know I'm gonna look back in a couple years, many years, and I'm not gonna have that same anxiousness that I had when setting this first up. So, I think that's with a lot of things that you look back on it and think, be present. You know what I mean? So just being present now, so that everything doesn't become just a checklist. Mm-hmm. Got to get this ready, got to get that ready. Okay, baby's here, so we got to do this, we got to do that. To make sure through each of the special moments that I'm actually in that moment, not thinking of what needs to happen next or what I could have done more to prepare, just being right there, experiencing it live.
That is very true. As inconvenient as this has been.
And for people listening, what is this?
This is me slipping and falling a Joshua tree about 3 weeks ago, and then getting surgery the week after. So I'm on the mending end of it, thank goodness, just in time to hold baby. It has really just slowed me down and made me not take each movement for granted, and it has forced me to really examine how I do every single thing, which has helped really just bring me into the moment and think about just the little things, like the fundamentals of just holding baby, which wasn't something that I had to think about at all. And so if you're at the granular level of holding, it just makes everything else more present and everything's just more of a thoughtful experience, how best to go about it. So it's been the most surprising blessing.
Well, I have tons of questions. Should we ask them here or in the car?
Should ask them here and then see where we go.
Okay. So we're doing this one a little out of order than we normally do, but I want you to introduce yourself to baby and share with baby the meaning or the story of your name. That's what everybody's doing.
Oh, okay.
She's like, why are you asking me this? I already met baby. So basically when we do these interviews, I'm saying to everybody, okay, talk to baby as if they are in the room, and then introduce yourself to baby and then share the story of your name.
Absolutely. Okay. Hello, baby. Kado? Kekema. So yeah, baby and I, as baby's already used to hearing, is mainly going to be Igbo language, and occasionally other languages, maybe English, maybe French. And the story of my name, I think it's appropriate that I started in Igbo because Adaora is such a typical Igbo name. If baby is a girl or gender assigned female, a baby is automatically an Ada. Like myself, the firstborn daughter of any family is an Ada. And they don't have to be named explicitly Ada, but that's their position in society and the position in the household. And it comes with lots of responsibility, but also a few perks. So that would be if baby is female, and that's Ada, the Ada part of the Adaora. And then Ora means, or Oha, means the community or the people or everyone. It's like the Igbo say Ohaneze. Ora and Eze. Eze is the people who lead, and Oha or Ora are the people that are being led in the community, that are being looked after or get a say in who is their Eze. So as the Ada of the Ora, you have your responsibility to look after the people and your community and make sure that they are well represented. And that's the story of my name, Adaora.
Like Auntie Adeza.
Yes, Auntie Adeza, who is Ada and Eze. So the first daughter of the Eze. And so her responsibility would be more to the Eze in some ways, or as princess, first daughter of the prince. So.
That's awesome. What about the other? What does it mean to you to be your now middle name? But what did it mean to you be a Wandu growing up?
It's so interesting. I think being a Wandu primarily for me was about the fact that our family is so big. And because the family is so big, I was always surrounded by family and just always had a very clear point of reference. Even though I was growing up abroad, I saw a lot of my mum's family, the Mbonos, and I saw quite a good number of my dad's family, the Wandus. But I never felt a sense of being displaced, because I always felt that I had roots somewhere. And then, of course, whenever we were back in Nigeria, especially once we grew up and we were back, we'd moved back to Nigeria when I was about 10, 11. 11. And through my teenage years, it really became a very significant part, because the Wandus have been living in Enugu for decades and we're very well established there. And so I couldn't really go out into town without running into someone I was related to, which gives you a sense of not just security, but also a sense of responsibility, knowing that you will be seen, you will be reported upon, but very much a sense of indulgence as well, because I always felt like family members I saw were on my side and we were always on each other's side. So it was more being protected and looked after rather than spied upon.
What would you like baby to know about being proud of being Nigerian? I know they're going to have a lifetime of that being instilled in them, but what would you like them to know right from the gate?
I think there's so many great things about being Nigerian. I think the first thing is the strength in numbers. I think there's a reason that we have thrived population-wise, not just geographically, because we have so much gorgeous geography all over the country, spanning from the rainforest region where we're from to more the Sahel desert region up north with the River Rhine and other pockets of everything. So geographically, and of course, we have lots of oceans bordering the country. But as a people, our resilience, our sense of opportunity, our willingness to look for that opportunity, a sense in the society that you are expected to do well and you should be expected to always be looking for a way to step up, especially Igbo society. How excellence is just seen as a standard, but that there's also just this huge sense of humor about who we are and what the way the world sees us, as well as, especially in Igbo land, almost a sense of superiority and entitlement and just being expected to be better, and how you take that for granted that you are better than that. And so as a result, you should be showing that you are better than all these other things. And I think that gives you something really important to strive for, to maybe always try and be your best self, be it in your external experience, external expression of yourself, or just in the way you share yourself with the world.
How do you think we're doing on time?
Yeah, I think this is a good place to stop.
A good place to stop? Mm-hmm. We'll come back in. So we're going to be in the car. So if we can finagle having video in the car, or otherwise we'll just have audio from here on out. But we wanted you to get to see us one of my hopes is that this is an introduction, but also a time capsule. So you can look back many years from now. Right now we're reflecting upon 30 years from now. That's what we were reflecting upon last night in the hotel room, 30 years from now. So maybe 30 years from now, we'll definitely watch this. But this is something you can look upon and see. I mean, look at Adaora. She's glowing, smoking hot. Look at that. You're just looking so good. Supermodel. Let me see if I can concentrate after that. So something, you can look back upon and see your parents' mindset, what we were thinking about. And, if ever you find yourself lost, you can also use this as a roadmap, some things to reflect upon that your parents were hoping to reflect upon as you were coming into this world. So we'll be back, but we wanted to just get this started with you seeing us. Let me go show you this view.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah, so this is where we stayed last night. But we were on the top floor. We got the free upgrade right up there. All right, we'll see you shortly. Part 2. Yeah, had to get the action sequence. Hopefully the sound quality is halfway decent. We are heading to our last OB appointment. All right, so we're gonna ask each other questions on this one. You want to start it off, or do you want me to start it off?
I would like to ask you.
All right.
Initially, when you thought about having children, maybe before we met,
Okay.
what you thought your life would need to be like before that happened, and how that concept has evolved since we started this journey of actually having a child.
Ooh, good question. It's hard to even remember now, to be honest. But I had imagined that, first of all, when I got married, that I would be established in my career. So, whatever leadership development, that whole business development, that whole area would be a solid foundation where I was able to then launch my music career, was already touring, all these kind of things. Best friends with Janelle Monáe, like all that vision I have was already established. Then I got married, and then from there, I never was like you, where yes, I really want to have kids. It wasn't this vision board of my life didn't include that. I had a feeling that once I get married, I guess I trusted that once you get married and you're with the person that you want to spend your life with, that I have a feeling that I will be very inspired to want to start a family with this person. So, but yeah, I think maybe, and it might be like a male thing, maybe, that you want to be financially secure and have this area of your life covered in terms of your business and all those kind of things. That was probably a big part of it. And I think a large part of my relationship with us together and listening to personal development stuff was finding balance in that, socialized as a man, to find your sense of purpose and fulfillment and your contribution and all that through your professional life. And so, especially around, I'd say 2016 into 2017, finding that balance of expressing and finding fulfillment in my personal life too. Did that answer the question? It's meandering.
It answered the first part of the question
Okay.
really well, and now the second part, I don't know if you've fully explained what you conceive of, where you want to be more yourself now to have kids, which I think is where you are now.
Can you ask again? I was looking at what our next section is.
For sure. So you answered the first part of the question, which was what you used to think.
Okay.
And now I would love to know what you think is needed to be in place to have a child. as opposed to...
For me or for anybody?
For you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I found from your encouragement of actually engaging with babies and children that I'm actually good with kids. And I would assume that a lot of that comes from my youth development background. Especially there was a 2-year stretch where me and Sarah with an H were thrown into a room of about 100 students that were from 6th to 8th grade, so like that terrorist year, and we're told basically and all we had was chairs. We put them in a circle and it was like, get these kids to not bully, and that was it. Bye. And we would have them for the entire day. And sometimes at lunch we'd be huddled on the ground trying to eat and figure out what to do next, and there would literally be children jumping over like that, where it's like the cartoon stereotype where it's like a tornado of kids, like that. They were literally jumping off the walls. And so I think learning how to communicate something so serious like bullying, discrimination, racism, homophobia to these young people with that energy, I think a lot of that has to do with why I'm able to. But anyways, I think finding confidence in that. Then my other big thing is that I think that what you can do the most is become the best self-aware version of yourself. What are your knee-jerk reactions where you're not your best self? What are the things that where you, like, one thing I think that I'm going to need to do is, I have a tendency to really push myself far before I stop to eat or rest or relax. And when I do that, if I know, hey, I can go until, let's say, 6 a.m. until 8:30 p.m. But at 8:30 p.m., I need to sit down and eat and relax for about an hour and then maybe go to bed. If I don't do that at 8:30, the further I go past 8:30, the more grumpy and short I'm going to be. I was reflecting last night because I kind of hit that wall that it's likely that I might have that plan in my head, but baby might not. And so you or baby or Nenma or somebody might need me to, at 8:30, instead of eat and do this whole thing, step up. And so I think one thing that I need to make sure that I'm doing is taking more times throughout the day. I can't push myself that far.
Absolutely. I so agree.
Was this stop talking?
No, that was I couldn't agree more. Okay. I think that's such a great revelation.
Okay.
I want you to remember that. And I'll keep squeezing you so you have a sense memory to attach to that thought, so it stays with you and it doesn't just flee.
I'm remembering our interview we did at the start of 2019 where you gently touched my leg to...
Yeah.
Okay, the audience has got enough of this answer, Tom. So I think little things like that, like, so often as parents, I'm already including myself in that, we don't realize, and there are things that I'm not even going to realize that I'm going to subconsciously pass. One of I think it was Kikanza in one of the interviews was saying, just remind your kids that hey, this is just one of those things you're going to have to work on in therapy that I didn't realize I was doing. So there are going to be elements of that, but I think the more of that stuff you can own and work through, the better place you can be set up for. There's a lot of logistical things that I was learning about towards the end with sleep and all these things that are, have nothing to do with psychology. It's more of the physiology of a baby.
Yeah.
I've been trying to, as much as I can. Oh, look, a little Packers bumper sticker. As much as I can, how can I be as there for our child as we can around aspects of their identity that might be a challenge living in a white supremacist America.
Yeah.
So, been working on that kind of stuff too. I'm ready.
You are so ready. And I also think there's such a huge difference between your answer of everything you thought you had to have in place before versus what you feel you have to have in place now. Before it was about circumstances, and now it's really about you as a person. I think that makes the biggest difference. But on that note, my next question is...
Oh, I just got to add, I mean, I have been working my ass off in my agency, so, I mean, I have a big driver of pushing a little bit harder in the professional life is still wanting that for baby and wanting that for you.
Yeah.
And us finding a house. So that other aspect is there, but I guess you're right that really when it comes down to baby, you can be rich, you can have not as much money right now, but if you're an asshole in both circumstances, baby's gonna be just as screwed.
Yep.
Whereas if you're an amazing parent in both circumstances, baby's gonna have a great chance. So that's a great point, my love. I appreciate you bringing that back to me. Okay, question number 2. Let's do it.
What are some aspects that you had in your life growing up that you want to make sure you replicate, and some things that happened while you were growing up that you want to make sure that you will try and avoid as best you can? And this is not a criticism of our parents. Circumstances for them sometimes meant that this was the situation they found themselves in. Of course, they did the best that they could. But for you, things that you remember from your childhood that you thought were not ideal, thinking back now, and things that you think, even at the time, that you may have not really liked, but you really think were awesome for you.
I like that, and I apologize for people watching the video right now with you're getting car sick. Let's put on some video stabilizations if we can. I love that question. A cabin. So I guess what does the cabin symbolize? I think one place where you can get away as a family that's detached, like how we just went, even if this was just down the road, where it really felt like we were out of LA. I mean, I barely looked at my phone. I really felt detached from circumstances. So maybe that's something up in Joshua Tree or somewhere where everybo's able to just get away from the hustle and bustle and really be there within ourselves, with each other. We're going to be growing up in a city for the foreseeable future, so I really want to make sure that my kids aren't afraid of bugs or getting out there in nature and messing around. And
you mean the same way you don't like sleeping in tents and that kind of thing?
No, a cabin, not a tent. Yeah, when you go to sleep, we can go inside and all that kind of stuff, but going out there and exploring nature and actually seeing the stars, all those kind of things. I want to make sure that our kids still have that, but that family time, that place to go. Let's see. So my mom, we'd always have dinner together throughout the week. All of us would sit down. Even both my parents would work their butts off, but they'd both find time to be together. And my mom would always have us say 3 good things that happened that day. So those growth mindset habits, I like that. I never knew what the word entrepreneur was really until I started listening to Gary Vee. I mean, I heard it before, but that was really like, entrepreneur. And I think for a lot of people of this time, entrepreneur is becoming a sexy thing. But my dad was an entrepreneur, and I really didn't know. Like, I didn't put together, he owns his own business. So at the same time, it was construction. So I appreciated how I had to do construction work when I was younger, and that really gave me an appreciation for work. But not only that, my dad's big thing was always have a sense of pride in what you do, whatever it was. So I'd ask, hey, is this good enough? And it'd be, is it something you're proud of? And so that lesson carries through to where there's some task that's stupid that I'll have to do, and I could just half-ass it and no one would notice, but I knew that I should have a sense of pride in it. And then the other is not the other end, but then my mom was doing service work. She's a social worker, so our kids having I want to make sure our kids have a calling to serve something greater than themselves.
Especially through volunteerism. Did you do much of being a volunteer growing up?
Probably. Doesn't stick out too much though. Nah, mostly I did hockey. We would volunteer now and again, but then the other thing was my grandma. I really I hope our kids get to have the multi-generational family in the house. So I hope that either, my mom or your mom ends up living with us or spending a significant amount of time of the year with us, or maybe us at grandma's house in Nigeria. But I really thought that was immensely valuable, having that intergenerational aspect of love and kindness. What are the things that I don't want? Let me see here. It's hard to say what you don't want, because it all shapes who you are. I think it's important for us to be mindful of how we engage in disagreements. I don't know.
Expand on that.
I don't know how to talk about, because you're almost talking about your parents' business. You know what I mean? I don't think I'm comfortable with that.
Let's their business, just in terms of how do you feel we should present to the kids on matters that we agree on and disagree on?
I think it's important to share with them that it's healthy for mom and dad to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
And so us disagreeing, even sometimes if we get a little heated, that in and of itself isn't negative. Conflict is a good thing, because it's usually, all these things I preach, how you work through conflict really determines if conflict is good or bad. Conflict itself is neutral. So, making it so that they're not like afraid or tense or scared that mom and dad are in a disagreement, getting them to know that there's this trust that they will work it out. And so I think communicating that early, I think it's going to be really helpful for our kids to grow up seeing us kissing, and me talking about how you're smoking hot and embarrassing them, and me wanting to go like above and beyond and rope them into doing these crazy happy birthday things and Mother's Day. And I think that'll be good for them to see, to just be disgusted with how much I love you until they get older and they appreciate it, but just like, I'm looking forward to normalizing that. My childhood wasn't very international, but that's just because it just wasn't. So I like how our kids aren't going to think Africa and picture like a conglomeration of random prints from a bunch of different countries, or they won't just say Africa, they will say North Africa. They will get it like specific. They won't just think Africa. So that's great. I like how they're gonna grow up with this huge family through your family, and that's a new thing. And your family works through their stuff. So there was always a little bit of drama here or there with extended family growing up. So I like how they're gonna have that solid cousinship and things like that. I think it's important that we try as much as we can to be in the car with our kids. So as much as I'm going to want to get them the Uber Unlimited or whatever, driving them as much as we can, or doing puzzles, things where we're able to hear their thoughts in a way where you don't have to look at each other. I think there's a way you can process.
That's an interesting thing that you picked up, being together and being able to talk and not necessarily just be face to face. Have something that's distracting you, that gives you less intensity and perhaps makes you talk more.
Yeah, you get a little self-conscious in your talks. Whether it's puzzles or going for walks are good, or in a car, than just sitting at a table. So, son, I found this.
I like it.
And what's this? This is I was trying to think of an artist that I think is garbage. Football DVDs. Sarah asked me, what's one thing that you wouldn't want your kids to do, or you would be like, oh my God, I can't believe my kids. I do not want our kids to play football.
Yeah, we agree.
So I guess that would be, I want to play football, I would be like, no! So, almost any, or boxing.
Yeah.
I'd be on the fence about
Strongly
wrestling.
agree.
So, oh yeah, and no motorcycles.
Yeah.
Otherwise, and everything else is kind of do your thing.
But it's also important that we perhaps don't play this part of the recording to our child until the 30s. Because if they know that these are the things from an early age, they will gravitate towards them.
My dad was very open about, I could do almost anything, but riding a motorcycle is one of them I could never do. And then he'd back it up with all the people that he was friends with who either were killed or lost a limb. So we'll just, I don't think everything has to become I'm gonna do what you say I shouldn't do, especially when there's so much openness. But I get what you mean. There is that element of
The taboo is especially sweet. I wasn't born, I don't think I was very much one of those people who really just wanted to do my thing because my parents didn't. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I would assess each thing on its own merits according to my understanding and then do them accordingly. And perhaps I should have taken more of a cue from what my parents thought I shouldn't be doing, but I always kind of came down to, is this crazy or is this super irresponsible? If I don't think it is, then I will probably go ahead.
Yeah, as much as I was a rebel, I wasn't consciously saying, let me rebel against what my parents don't want. Especially since my parents were both so open. So I was the same.
Okay. Questions for me?
Yeah, what other questions do you have for me? I'm enjoying talking about myself. No, I got one for you. So you are great. One thing I admire about you is you have friends that span years. And you're also able to be friends with what people might associate with difficult, eccentric people. And it's one thing I really admire, that there's people I'll get to be in relationship with through you that I would initially think, there's no way I would ever want to hang out with this person again if I just met them first. Then I got to know them, I got to see what you see in them. So talk about that. It's a beautiful quality that you have.
I think a lot of it stems from the way I grew up. I grew up in a big household where you just were expected to have lots of people around all the time. And so in our house in Nigeria and our house in Enugu, even when we moved to the UK, they were in like 4 or 5 bedroom house. And so we always had lots of people coming in and out. And I would make sure I had my own space. So that gave me peace and kind of an ability to appreciate everything. I didn't feel stressed about it because I didn't feel like I was cornered into any sort of space. And I think once you start with that security of knowing that this is your home and you have a place in it, it's very easy to welcome lots of people into your space. And as a result, I think I just grew up with all kinds of people, because if you have relatives coming in and out, they're not all going to be easy, they're not all going to be nice, but you approach them from a neutral standpoint where you're also perhaps someone who's not got a lot of power in their eyes, so they have no reason to try and oppress you, or sometimes they will. So you end up being treated relatively well by them, despite the fact that they may be having arguments and fights with everybody else. I think because I started off like that, I've always felt able to approach all kinds of people in a way that there is something of interest and value in our interaction, and then it allows me to see if this is something that I can build a relationship on. And even if it is something that isn't necessarily them bringing their best selves all the time, when they do bring their best selves, I love it, I appreciate it, and I try and hold on to it. And that, I think, helps me keep with the relationship and always reach out and see if I can find that aspect of them. However, there is a part of me that I the exact opposite that I am always working on, which is sometimes the last thing you did in our relationship is the thing that will overwhelm my overall impression of our relationship. So if it's something extremely negative, I may find myself completely forgetting all the great things that we did to build this. Whereas I want to always keep a whole picture of our relationship and not just completely judge it by the last thing. That said, I don't necessarily give up on the relationship because of that last bad thing, but it does cloud my judgment. I think it does weigh too heavily. So I think I could do better with my relationships if I was able to keep that holistic view. But yeah, I think most people have a really great side, and if you can stay connected to that really great side, it doesn't make it hard to be in a relationship.
I haven't seen that in you. Maybe I think that's normal if somebody does something and you're upset by it, but I haven't seen you ghost somebody or not give someone a chance to talk about it or work through it. So I think that I think that you're doing great at that, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. It does make sense. This means I hide it well.
You have always, maybe not always, but you have had a passion for wanting a baby much longer than I have. And I'm sure the older you got, the more either you worried about it or people reminded you or people told you it couldn't be done, all of these kind of things. So I guess it's a two-for question. If you could share, what was the inspiration, or how did you know you always wanted to have a child, and having the patience to wait, and you even knew you wanted to do it by yourself a little bit, just kind of that whole ball of energy, if you could talk about it.
I think it's also another aspect of my childhood, growing up surrounded by family and knowing I wanted to continue that tradition. My dad is one of 22, my mum was one of 6, and just having them and their siblings, the way they interact and the bonds between them was always something that, when it came down to things I wanted in my life, I could see looking back on at the very end of life and wondering, did I hit these landmarks? I knew having children would be one of the ones that would be essential as part of my vision for what makes for a great life.
When was that? How old were you when you started to believe that?
I think just growing up, and I also think part of what helped was being, especially when we were living in the UK, most of my dad's siblings, my mum's siblings, especially the female ones, and sisters-in-law and friends, they would come and camp out at our house just before they had their babies. So I'd see them pregnant, and then I'd see them come home with their kids, and I'd be number one babysitter because I was just kind of around and relatively patient. And so I just grew up with all my cousins just being born in our house and staying there for the first few months of life. I think because my mum used to be a midwife and then went on to be a healthcare visitor. Plus we were offering free accommodation in a very easy, accessible part of London. It just made it really convenient. So just seeing all these children come into the world and the way they're welcomed and nurtured, and it never felt like a big, overwhelming thing for me. And I know people talk about lack of sleep, but when you're 5 or 6 or 7, I don't know if you're really noticing that you're waking up and the baby's crying, then the baby's not crying, and whatever. I do remember changing lots of diapers, but never really being bothered by that. So it never felt like a big thing to bring them into the world, and it always felt like a super rewarding thing to have them in the world as they grow up and as relatives, as your family. So I think that was part of it. And then I think by the time I got to 27, 28, it really became a strong biological urge. I don't know how to explain it, but it was really just this very, very physical desire, and that lasted, I think, into my early 30s. And then after that, it just went back to my values of what made a big and important and useful life was to have this family that you brought into the world and you created, and you perhaps together made the world a better place, just even through adding more love to the world, or just adding more safe spaces to the world for each other.
I didn't know that around your end of your 20s, early 30s, it became that. In fact, I remember it was me and my friend Serena, and we're both working for Hackney Council, I think, at the time, and we're about the same age. I think we're about a month apart. And at the time, she was engaged to get married, and she'd grown up in Italy and then been living in New York and doing all sorts of things around the world. But we were just so similar in our physical need for it. It was so interesting. We talk about it, how we are these modern women who are out in the world. She'd been consulting for the UN, she'd done all sorts of things with her life, but biologically, as we're turning 30, this drive was just banging on us, and because she was engaged, she did get to have her children soon after. But it was always something that we just talked about, how this clock thing is so real. And it wasn't even a ticking clock saying you're running out of time. It was just more this strong hormonal broodiness that was just lingering for, I would say, at least for me, 3 or 4 year period. For her, maybe after she had her first, but she had 2 daughters in relatively quick succession, and it may have passed after that. But yeah, it was interesting. And so then you wanted to have the baby on your own. You were going to have the baby on your own.
I always knew that if I never had that same landmark thing that other people probably have about marriage, how you have to be married, you have to be in a relationship to make a good life. But because I always knew that about how I wanted that I wanted children, I felt that way about children. I knew marriage was either or. So that's why I was thinking, well, if I'm not going to be able to set up a situation that's ideal for bringing in children, which is having a second person who's there permanently to assist and be as invested in the child's or the children's upbringing, then I will make the most of having this wonderful large family. And just as much as it's me on my own, it's not really. I have family who will do their best to support. But yeah, a lot of it would fall on me, but I was quite willing to go for it because it was one of those things I felt made a life. Whereas whether or not you did it with someone else wasn't necessarily the priority.
Now we're in front of Grandma's favorite place, the Beverly Center. And so that's when we met. And then we made the decision to have a child together instead.
That was a long time after the decision was made. I think that was the thing that was most pivotal in our relationship. I always, from day one, it was a conversation I had with you, that this was happening with or without you. And when I got to the point where I also knew that aspect was going to happen with or without you, but now the place we were in our relationship, I needed to define where I was moving in the relationship. It was getting to a point where it needed to move in one direction or the other. And if we were going to move forward, then it would mean you being on that journey with me with kids. And if we weren't going to move forward, then I would be free and clear to start afresh and either have kids on my own or find someone who wants to have kids with me.
Well, we in our episode we did on our marriage, folks can refer back to that one. So then we decide to have kids and you get pregnant. Do you want to share any thoughts on what it's been like leading up to tomorrow where you're gonna have the baby?
I think it's been just this lack of belief that this thing that what I've wanted for so long is actually going to happen. And initially it manifested itself in just not bringing hopes up too high. And as we've come closer to the date, I've allowed myself, and I think both of us have allowed ourselves to believe that this thing is going to happen, this thing that's just been almost mythical and yeah, a miracle. Years of wanting it, I think it's also how they say with childbirth, you forget how hard it was. It's felt relatively easy. And yeah, I've been nauseous the entire time. I've been super gassy, physically uncomfortable just in terms of my digestive system. But generally speaking, once we went down the journey with IVF, all of that has been relatively straightforward. We did lose one of the twins early, and I think that was the biggest blow on this journey. But even that had a sense of, well, what's meant to be will be. And this is the shape our journey is supposed to be now. And so I think that really helped us move past that and just be blessed time and time again as we proceed. So, yeah, there's just been a sense of we are very blessed, and also a sense of how did we get this lucky?
Yes.
And that said, we are at Dr. Walden's.
So maybe we'll to be continued?
Perhaps, or this might be a great place to end.
We shall see. Either way, we are so excited to meet you. We'll do a 10-second final conclusion.
Sure.
All right, last OB visit before you come tomorrow. We're back.
Yes, we are.
So we just got done with the last OB appointment.
We did, yes.
That's it.
You, baby, were looking straight at us there, so it was very exciting to look at your little face. I don't think we'll be looking at your little face again until we see it in the flesh.
Yep.
That was really, really fun.
And you usually turn away from the ultrasound.
Yes, but this time you were just dead on.
So I think you know, I keep telling you all week, you're coming out, don't get surprised.
Yes.
So I think you're it's resonating, sinking in. What was that look?
No, it was just a look of you speak the truth. And it was resonating, and I think, yeah, all this activity is hopefully a sign to you that things are moving.
Oh, we got the house all ready to go. The last thing that we were really wanting to come in just came in, so I'll put that all together when we get home. Assemble that. We're going to pick up your grandma. What does grandma go by?
Nana.
By Nana. From Enugu to, where did she drive to before she flew?
She drove to Owerri, and then she took a plane from Owerri to Lagos, and then she took a plane from Lagos to London, and another one from London to LA, which she had just landed. So she's been traveling since Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah, Sunday morning to get here Tuesday, just to be around and help with you when you're here. That's how loved you are.
I almost wanted to say Matthews. Oh yeah. And your grandpa, my dad's here. His was a much easier journey. He went from Waterford to Milwaukee to Burbank. So him and Nana and Jenny and Uncle Kyle, they will be in the waiting room.
Uncle Kyle?
Maybe Uncle Kyle. So we can cheer out when we announce your arrival. Woohoo! So I guess we're in the shade. In the shadow!
Shallows.
Oh yeah. I always change the lyrics to fit me.
You'll learn this about your dad soon enough.
Well, any other questions that you're curious about?
You can ask them in person when you're old enough to ask these things, and we'll answer them as best we can.
I'm trying to think if I have any other questions for you.
Oh, me? No.
Yeah.
Nothing more to ask, I don't think. Just ready for your year of adventure and this adventure to unfold.
So here's what I've been asking everybody. So everybody gets their own little questions. But these sign-off questions are, here's some of the theme questions. One is, what would you like a baby to know who's being born in 2020? And then as I'm asking these, if any of them come up that you want to respond to. A decent amount of people I asked, if baby ever doubts that their blackness is beautiful and wonderful and all these amazing things, what would you share with them? I have asked, and then one of the questions I asked is, what can baby turn to you for? To people. And then I always conclude with, what's your invitation to baby?
My invitation to our child is to know that lots of things will happen with us, but at the foundation of all of them is love. And hopefully they'll always feel that love the same way I've always felt it with my parents, where regardless of what's happening, I haven't really doubted it. I have been angry, I've been disappointed, I've been overjoyed, I've been weirded out, lots of feelings, but under it I've never doubted that foundation of love, and that's my invitation to you. In terms of what can you always turn to me for, I hope a safe space. I will do my best to always be able to create that, and one where the love is unconditional. It doesn't mean that there won't be expectations, there won't be this, there won't be that, but again, that foundation of love will never be doubted. So that hopefully will create that safety net that you need when you want to take risks in your life, and even when we go through challenging times. In terms of blackness being beautiful, hopefully I will do my best to model that, and all the fabulous Nigerians around us, as well as all the fabulous black people around us, will continue to be a daily inspiration, as well as those in the media, and hopefully just a being from the family you're from, where we promote and encourage and love blackness, will make it very straightforward. And what was the very first question you asked me again?
What would you like a baby to know?
In 2020?
Yeah, who's being born in 2020.
I think every year that a baby is born, we're living in interesting times that are always changing. But this happens to be an election year, which may or may not change things depending on the outcome of the elections. But it could also be a really interesting time for things to shift. But we're living in a time when everything is in flux, and the things that we know and believe right now may not be the same in a decade or 20 or 30, 50 years. And the rate of progressive change is just sped up. But you are coming into a family.
Whoops. What were you saying?
But it kept everything we did up till then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that you're living in a time of great change, and you're coming into a family that is aware of the change and is moving with the times, and will try and stay as updated as we are able. But we also know that it's very much the generation that's coming in, the kids that were born in 2020, that will be the ones that are holding our hands and pulling us forward into this change as well. And as much as we will be I'll do our best to be your guide, we know that very much it's the kids now that will become our guides in the years to come.
Well said, my love. Well said. For me, I was very blessed to be one of, I think, the few people, I'm going to be honest, not the few as in like 5, but the few as in percentage, whose college degree did more than just give them a skill or book knowledge, that it gave me, it transformed me as a person and gave me all those other things. And one of the classes that I took was a rites of passage class. So we were learning about how rites of passage are important in childhood development. And it was experiential in that we went through a rite of passage ourselves. So it was a semester long. So, I don't know, 5 months. And one of the things they had us do, or many of the things, was we had to research 9 months, what was going on 9 months before our birth and 9 months after our birth. And we had to look up the meanings of our name. And we had to ask our parents this question and that. A lot of different things we had to do. And I think that was in the back of my mind while I was creating this for you. That if you, well, we're gonna be putting you through lots of intentional rites of passages and these kind of things. But there's gonna become a time where you're gonna be doing those things on your own. You're gonna go on your own personal development, spiritual journeys. And so this can be, hopefully, a little insight for you into that. There's going to be things you're going to look back on and wonder, why was my dad so obsessed with asking this question of everybody? It's not helpful, Dad. You should have asked this question. And so that'll already give you insight into the fact that your mom and your dad and all of the people who care for you, we all have our own perspective and biases and ways of looking at the world. And so one of the advices or things that my dad always told me throughout my life was, he'd always say, be your own man, Thomas. And so my invitation for you would be to be your own person, which is something that's both easy and challenging. And so right now, as you're being born, you're going to be excellent at being your own person. You're gonna whatever you want, you're gonna ask for. You're gonna believe you can get it. And so, if ever you find yourself in someone's shadow, or you find that you have been following the beat of someone else's drum, or you're following the beat of your own drum right now, and it's a challenge, you're receiving pushback for it, I just want you to remember that you're not here yet, but already in Adaora's belly, I can tell you that you are definitely being your own person.
Yep.
That when every single time this happens, not once, every single time when the nurses or the doctor comes to put the monitor on you, you go to the other side. You're like, nah, no monitor for me. When they're like, wake up, you go to sleep. So you're doing your own thing right now, and I have a feeling tomorrow when you come on out, you're going to do your own thing. So that ability to be yourself, that's one of the first things that you had in terms of moving just beyond your physical things like your heart and all that kind of stuff. So that's my invitation for you, to be your own person and to talk it out, to try to always give Mom and I the chance to talk it out, even if you need to go for a walk or you need to go to Enaguku for a month.
Absolutely. But
past a month, I'm probably going to track you down, show up via helicopter. Like, I'm here, let's talk about this. So that's my hope, that no matter what happens between any of us, because things will happen,
yeah,
that we always talk it through. Let's see, anything else that I've asked people? I think what you can turn to me for is going to be different as you get older. I think what you can turn to me for now is fun. I feel like I'm going to be a lot of the fun. Not to say that I won't do your diaper changing and all those logistical...
And some discipline.
And discipline too. So I have this theory. Leadership is a bridge. Management is a bridge. I'm sure parenthood is going to be a bridge. We're going to have two polarized, opposite things. What are discipline and freedom. Fun and seriousness. And each circumstance is going to call for a different part on that bridge that I will be. So it's always helpful to have a structure from which to improvise within. I feel like I just want to keep talking it out, but it feels so, this is the final, this is the last thing we're going to say before I conclude these interviews, and then baby's here. I'm getting a little teary-eyed. I think I'm stalling. I'm looking forward to, I have had a lot of fun recording these 15-minute, ours is the longest one, everything else was 15-minute interviews on a particular topic. So, and around you, baby. So I'm looking forward to interviewing people once you're born and you're in their arms or different things like that. So I'm curious about that next chapter. So you're gonna learn maybe that a lot of things come back to TomRell.com. So
it's also at AdoraWandu.com, but
and .net.
Yeah, Adaora.net. But yeah.
Anything else, my love?
That's everything.
All right, we're so excited to meet you. What a absolute honor and privilege it is to get to be your parents. What a true blessing. And I've always known, Adaora asked very earlier ago, you know, my journey of wanting to be a parent. And you'll hear our love story many times. But when we were going through that 24 to 36 hour period of, are we going to move forward together or not? The thing that I kept thinking all along, whenever Adaora and I would talk about babies, is whoever gets to have Adaora as a mom automatically hit the jackpot. And you know, I've always known once I have a kid, I want them to have as many advantages as they can have. And having a good mom is probably one of the best advantages you can get in the game. So I knew that Slauson, I just want me to get off at Slauson. So I knew that having Adaora as the mom would be the best. And so excited to talk with you and for you get to look up and see Adaora smiling down on you. That's what I'm so excited for you to get. All right. Love you, baby.
Love you.
And I love you, my love.
Love you.
Peace and blessings. See you soon. Inshallah. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode from Gifts for My Child. I hope you will stay tuned for next week's episode where you are going to hear from 4 of my friends that I interviewed, and we sit down and I ask them different questions, some the same that you've heard this week. You're going to hear new perspectives, and then some new fresh perspectives that I asked people. Any feedback you have, anything you'd like to add on, any advice you'd like to share with Jayanma or me as a parent, tom@tomearl.com. That'd be so much appreciated. If you want to support the show, I invite you to become a member of the Celebration Academy. You can learn more by going to tomearl.com/courses. You can become a member for as little as $10 a month. You can support the show and get access to a ton of courses and professional development, leadership development, business development resources at your fingertips. All right, my friends, I look forward to you joining us next week. Thank you. Peace and blessings. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.